The gavel's echo thundered through the courtroom like a gunshot, freezing every breath in the room. The guarded survivor pressed their hands tight against the wooden bench, whispering, "This wasn't supposed to happen." The verdict rang guilty, but the words felt drenched in betrayal, as though justice itself had fractured. The reluctant fire starter shifted nervously at the back, eyes darting, whispering to no one, "They played you." The warm comforter leaned forward, their calm smile unnervingly steady, murmuring, "Sometimes truth bends." The steady anchor stood silently in the shadows, face carved in stillness, unreadable but present, grounding the storm. Then came the vibration, a phone buzzing in the guarded survivor's pocket. Midnight digits glowed on the screen, a message unsigned but unmistakable. It was me. Every sound collapsed into silence, every heartbeat louder than thunder. The guarded survivor closed their eyes, as though bracing for an impact no one else could see. The courtroom emptied slowly, every shuffle echoing like a ghost in the chamber. The guarded survivor lingered, tracing her fingertips across the wood as if it could still hold answers. "They wanted this," she whispered, though no one responded. Outside, the rain beat against the windows, a rhythmic pulse that mocked her silence. The warm comforter remained at her side, voice steady, "You can't fight the tide tonight." The words dripped like honey, comforting yet suffocating. The reluctant fire starter leaned in the doorway, restless eyes burning with the weight of secrets. "You should have known," he said, his voice laced with bitter defiance. The anchor did not move, his silence louder than their words. In that void, the survivor realized the verdict wasn't just a sentence, it was a message. The guarded survivor stepped into the rain, each drop cutting like glass against her skin. She remembered a voice from years ago, the lingering memory, whispering through time, "Don't trust the silence." She pulled her coat tighter, her unread letter tucked close to her chest. The warm comforter followed with an umbrella, his calm presence both shield and prison. "You need to rest," he urged, eyes scanning her too carefully. The reluctant fire starter kicked at puddles, voice sharp, "Rest won't save you." The steady anchor locked the courthouse doors behind them, the metallic click sounding like a seal on fate. They reached the parking lot, shadows bending across cracked pavement. The guarded survivor hesitated by her car, staring at the unread letter tucked in her bag. "It won't go away," she muttered. The warm comforter placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his touch soft yet weighted. The reluctant fire starter paced in circles, muttering, "Someone's watching." His gaze flicked toward the far corner where the steady anchor stood, still and unreadable. The survivor's phone buzzed again, same message flashing, "It was me." Her breath caught, knowing the double cross had already begun its descent. The engine roared to life, headlights slicing through the rain. The guarded survivor gripped the wheel, her heart pounding with the rhythm of betrayal. The warm comforter slid into the passenger seat, his calm voice cutting through the storm, "We'll face this together." The reluctant fire starter hopped in back, muttering, "You're already too late." In the rearview mirror, the steady anchor remained outside, his shadow stretching longer than the light. The survivor glanced at her phone one last time. The message glowed like a curse. It was me. She drove into the night, unaware that every mile carried her deeper into the trap already set. The guarded survivor sat alone at her kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence with a mocking rhythm. She unfolded the letter but did not read it, tracing its edges with trembling fingers. She whispered, "Why now?" The warm comforter arrived without knocking, his voice dripping with reassurance. "You don't have to face this alone," he said, sliding into the chair across from her. His presence felt both safe and suffocating. The reluctant fire starter leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes sharp with frustration. "He's lying to you," he hissed, voice burning with raw anger. The survivor's hand twitched toward her phone, the haunting message echoing in her mind. The steady anchor called from outside, steady and calm. "It's late. Let's end this talk tonight." The tension pulled tighter, each word cutting deeper. The letter, the phone, the faces, All of it felt like traps closing in. Rain streaked the window as the warm comforter poured coffee, his voice soft. "You need rest, not questions," he said, placing the cup near her hand. The guarded survivor shook her head, whispering, "Every answer has a cost." The reluctant fire starter snatched the cup away, spilling drops across the table. "He wants you weak," he snapped, eyes flashing with fury. The warm comforter only smiled, wiping the mess with calm precision, his gaze never breaking. "Anger won't change truth," he murmured. The survivor pressed her palms into her temples, feeling the weight of betrayal sink deeper into her chest. From outside, the steady anchor's silhouette remained, silent, his presence grounding yet ominous. Her phone buzzed once more, screen glowing like a wound she could not close. The words lingered in her mind. "It was me." The guarded survivor opened the door and stepped into the rain, her coat clinging to her as if trying to hold her in place. The reluctant fire starter followed, shoving his hands deep into his pockets. "You're running from the wrong enemy," he muttered. The warm comforter stood at the doorway, umbrella in hand, calling softly, "You can't survive without me." The survivor turned, her eyes sharp with fury. "Surviving isn't the same as living," she said, voice breaking. The steady anchor stepped out of the shadows by the car, his tone steady. "You need to decide who to trust." Lightning split the sky, illuminating their faces, fear, anger, calm, and silence. For the first time, the survivor felt the storm outside, matched the chaos within. They gathered under the flickering streetlight, rain pelting the pavement like shattered glass. The guarded survivor clutched the unread letter, her knuckles pale with strain. "Tell me who betrayed me," she demanded, voice trembling. The reluctant fire starter sneered, "He's standing right there." He gestured toward the warm comforter, whose calm expression never faltered. "I've only ever protected you," the comforter replied, his tone measured, soothing. The steady anchor interrupted, his voice low. "Enough. The truth is heavier than your anger." The survivor's chest rose and fell in ragged breaths, torn between trust and suspicion. Thunder rolled overhead, the storm echoing her fractured heart. The rain finally eased, leaving a silence heavier than thunder. The guarded survivor sank to her knees, the letter damp in her hands. She whispered, "Why does truth feel like poison?" The warm comforter crouched beside her, hand gently touching her shoulder. "Because lies are sweeter," he said, voice smooth as silk. The reluctant fire starter crouched opposite, eyes fierce. "Don't let him bury you." The survivor looked between them, torn by trust and betrayal. The steady anchor stood apart, his shadow stretching across the wet pavement. "Every choice is a wound," he said quietly, eyes locked on hers. The survivor realized she was no longer choosing between allies and enemies. She was choosing which wound to survive. The guarded survivor paced across the dim motel room, her reflection fractured in the cracked mirror. "They wanted me cornered," she muttered, clutching her phone. The reluctant fire starter sat cross-legged on the bed, flipping a lighter in his hand. "They're not just after you, they're after what you carry," he said, his voice sharp. The warm comforter leaned by the door, smile steady, voice soft. "You're safe here, for now." The survivor's chest tightened, her eyes scanning the letter she had yet to read. Outside, thunder rumbled, a storm echoing her dread. The steady anchor entered quietly, his face unreadable. "We don't have time. Evidence is slipping away," he said. The room felt suffocating, four walls holding too many secrets. The reluctant fire starter leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Evidence disappears because someone here hides it." The warm comforter raised his hands in calm defense. "Accusations don't solve anything," he replied smoothly. The guarded survivor clutched her chest, heart pounding, whispering, "I can't lose more." The steady anchor's voice cut through, steady as stone. "Then stop chasing shadows. Focus on proof." Lightning lit the room, exposing fear etched in every face. Silence followed, heavy and sharp as broken glass. The survivor felt betrayal circling her like a noose, tightening with every breath. The guarded survivor unlocked her phone, replaying the message again. It was me. The words pulsed like venom. She whispered, "Why confess to me?" The reluctant firestarter leaned closer, his voice sharp. "Because you're the one meant to fall." The warm comforter crossed the room, lowering his tone. "Or maybe it's meant to divide us." The steady anchor's jaw tightened, silence his only weapon. The survivor's hand shook, her breath uneven. She felt every gaze burning into her, each one carrying its own version of truth. Outside, sirens wailed, rising and fading like ghosts hunting the night. The reluctant firestarter slammed his fist against the wall. "You're blind if you still trust him." His voice cracked with fury. The warm comforter's calm smile only deepened, his tone even. "Anger blinds more than trust." The guarded survivor's voice trembled. "I can't tell who's lying anymore." The steady anchor stepped forward, his shadow filling the room. "Then stop asking who, ask why." The survivor's knees weakened, the letter slipping from her hand onto the floor. A thunderclap shook the window, rattling the glass like a warning. The letter lay crumpled on the floor, untouched yet burning with meaning. The guarded survivor crouched, staring at it like it held her fate. "If I read this, everything changes," she whispered. The reluctant firestarter urged, "Then read it before it's stolen again." The warm comforter crouched beside her, voice calm, "Not all truth saves." The steady anchor's tone cut through, firm. "Decide now before choice is gone." The survivor closed her eyes, her breath shallow. The storm outside broke into sudden silence, the air heavy with what would come next. The motel's silence shattered when the guarded survivor finally unfolded the letter. Her eyes scanned the words, and her breath left her body as if someone had stolen the air itself. She whispered, "It was never an accident." The reluctant firestarter leaned forward, confusion turning to fear. "What does it say?" he demanded. The warm comforter took a step closer, his calm mask faltering for the first time. "You shouldn't read it aloud," he urged, tone tightening. The survivor's voice broke as she read. "The fire, the one that destroyed everything, wasn't fate, it was orchestrated." The steady anchor's gaze turned to stone, his silence deafening. Thunder shook the walls, but the louder sound was the crack in trust that none of them could repair. The reluctant firestarter grabbed the letter, scanning the ink-stained words with trembling hands. "Someone set it all up," he said, voice cracking. The guarded survivor clutched her arms, whispering, "But who?" The warm comforter's expression smoothed back into its usual calm, though his eyes carried a flicker of unease. "Not every truth belongs in the open," he said gently. The steady anchor finally spoke, his words sharp. "This wasn't random. It was designed." His gaze shifted toward the comforter with weight heavy enough to break stone. The survivor's heartbeat thundered louder than the storm. Betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was an approaching storm inside the room. The guarded survivor's hands shook as the reluctant firestarter read aloud the letter's final line. "The man who comforted you was never your savior." Silence flooded the room like poison. The warm comforter exhaled slowly, not denying, not explaining, only watching. His calm had become terrifying. "You've all misunderstood," he said softly. The reluctant firestarter shouted, "You betrayed her." His fury ricocheted against the walls. The steady anchor moved closer, voice low but dangerous. "So you're the architect?" The survivor's voice cracked. "It was you all along." The air thickened until breathing itself felt like drowning. The warm comforter raised his hand, voice silk but blade beneath. "I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything." The guarded survivor's knees weakened, her chest tightening as if her heart fought to break free. The reluctant firestarter slammed the letter against his chest. "You let them burn," he cried, tears cutting down his face. The comforter's calm tones sliced through the storm. "Sacrifice for survival is not betrayal. It's necessity." The steady anchor's eyes narrowed, fists clenched. You decided whose lives were worth more. The survivor whispered, "You're the reason I lived, and why they died." Her words cracked the air like lightning. The letter slipped to the floor, landing in a puddle of rainwater that had crept beneath the door. The guarded survivor stared at the comforter with eyes that no longer held trust, only shattered recognition. "You saved me to own me," she whispered. The warm comforter's calm shattered, his voice tightening. "I gave you life when fate wanted you gone." The reluctant fire starter shouted, "You stole it from everyone else." The anchor stepped forward, his tone heavy as stone. "The truth isn't about survival. It's about the cost you left behind." The survivor closed her eyes, realizing betrayal was never hidden. It had been holding her hand all along. The courthouse basement smelled of mildew and secrets, the perfect place for a final confrontation. The guarded survivor stood at the center, the unreadable letter clutched like a weapon. Her voice trembled but carried weight. No more lies. The warm comforter paced the shadows, calm demeanor fractured by flickers of tension. "You think truth is pure? It's just another mask," he said. The reluctant fire starter leaned against the wall, anger sharp as fire. "You traded lives like they were nothing." The steady anchor's voice echoed, low and steady. "Your choices buried them all." The survivor lifted her head, her voice breaking. "You made me live with guilt you created." The room vibrated with fury, grief and betrayal pressing against every wall. The warm comforter stopped pacing, his eyes locking on the survivor. "You were never meant to know," he said softly, almost tenderly. The survivor's face twisted in rage. "You stole my choice." The reluctant fire starter stepped forward, voice raw. "You let the fire take them while you watched." The comforter's voice sharpened. "I saved her when no one else would." His words thundered through the hollow chamber. The steady anchor cut in, voice grave. "Saving one by destroying many is no salvation." The survivor's tears burned her cheeks. She whispered, "You didn't save me. You sentenced me." The reluctant fire starter slammed the letter against the comforter's chest. "Here's your truth. Own it." His voice cracked with fury. The comforter caught it, his hand trembling for the first time. "Truth is survival," he said, his calm unraveling. The survivor's breath shook, her voice rising. "No, truth is every grave you left behind." The steady anchor's eyes narrowed, his tone heavy. "And the cost you never paid." The comforter's mask shattered, voice breaking into rage. "I chose who could live. I did what no one else would." The survivor's scream cut through the basement. "You chose yourself." The warm comforter lunged forward, his voice breaking into fury. "You don't understand what sacrifice means." His words cut like blades. The survivor stumbled back, clutching the table for balance. "Sacrifice isn't yours to decide," she cried. The reluctant fire starter stepped between them, eyes blazing. "You're nothing but a coward hiding behind kindness." The comforter's calm was gone, his face twisted with desperation. "I carried you all." The steady anchor advanced, towering. "No, you buried us." The basement air crackled with violence, the storm inside them more dangerous than the one raging outside. The guarded survivor finally stood tall, her trembling gone, her voice steel. "You don't own my survival anymore." Her words echoed with finality. The warm comforter froze, the weight of her defiance cutting deeper than any blade. The reluctant fire starter whispered fiercely, "She doesn't need you." The steady anchor's gaze hardened. "Your control ends here." The comforter's face twisted, his final attempt at calm collapsing. "You'll regret this," he hissed. But the survivor's steady eyes silenced him. For the first time, she was no longer bound by his chains. The double cross had fractured, and justice, however twisted, was finally hers to claim. The courthouse echoed with hollow footsteps as the guarded survivor walked into the main chamber. The weight of the letter pressed against her hand like a chain she could no longer bear. She whispered to herself, "This has to end." The warm comforter followed behind, restrained but still composed, his eyes burning with quiet defiance. The reluctant firestarter stood by the gallery railing, fists clenched, whispering, "Don't let him twist it again." The steady anchor joined her side, his voice steady as stone. "Truth isn't always justice, but it must be spoken." The survivor inhaled, her chest rising, as though preparing for war. She stepped forward, placing the letter on the judge's bench. Silence swallowed the room. The guarded survivor's voice echoed across the chamber as she unfolded the letter and began to read. The fire was no accident. Lives were traded. Trust was stolen. Her voice trembled but did not break. The warm comforter's calm facade cracked, his hands curling into fists. "You don't understand what survival costs," he said, his voice rising. The reluctant firestarter shouted from the gallery, "She understands more than you ever will." The steady anchor's eyes locked on the comforter. "Your power ends when truth is named." The survivor's final words cut through like a blade. He chose who lived and who burned. The warm comforter stepped forward, desperation finally replacing calm. "I saved her when no one else would. Every life is weighed. I chose survival over chaos." His voice broke as he spoke. The guarded survivor lifted her head, tears on her cheeks but steel in her eyes. "You chose control, not survival," she said, her voice cutting through the chamber. The reluctant firestarter's fist struck the railing. "He's confessed," he cried. The steady anchor's voice carried weight like thunder. "Justice must decide, not him." The chamber trembled with the collision of rage, grief and truth, like a storm refusing to quiet. The judge's bench remained empty, but the survivor's words filled the void like a verdict. "Justice isn't perfect, but silence is worse." The warm comforter collapsed against the rail, his composure gone, his voice low. "You'll regret breaking me," he muttered. The reluctant firestarter leaned forward, his voice fierce. "She already regrets what you made her carry." The steady anchor placed a hand on the survivor's shoulder, his tone grounding. "You've done what they never could." For the first time, the survivor felt the weight shift from her chest. The truth was spoken, even if justice would never be enough. The courthouse doors creaked open, spilling pale light into the chamber. The guarded survivor walked out first, her face carved by scars of grief, but her shoulders lifted by release. The reluctant firestarter trailed behind, muttering, "It's not over, but it's a start." The warm comforter remained inside, his figure shrinking in the dark eyes hollow with broken power. The steady anchor followed the survivor, his steps steady, his silence grounding. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world wet, scarred, and strangely quiet. The survivor whispered to the wind, "Justice doesn't heal. It only marks the truth." Her words lingered as the light swallowed them all. The guarded survivor returned to the ruins where it all began, the charred remains of the building that still carried the scent of ash and grief. She stood among the blackened walls, whispering, "You never left me." The reluctant firestarter traced his fingers along the scorched beams, his voice sharp but soft. "The past doesn't burn away, it lingers." The steady anchor stood in silence, his presence a reminder of choices that weighed heavier than time. The survivor unfolded the letter one last time and let it fall into the ashes, watching it dissolve into soot. "The truth is already written in fire," she said, her voice steady at last. A faint sound drifted through the ruins, a melody once hummed by the lingering memory, soft and haunting. The survivor froze, her eyes scanning the hollow air as if searching for a ghost. She whispered, "I hear you." The reluctant firestarter tilted his head, uneasy. "Is it real, or just what we want to believe?" The steady anchor's gaze didn't shift. "Memory never dies, it only waits." The survivor closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her, fragile yet piercing. She felt the presence of what was lost wrapping around her like smoke, a truth that was never gone, only hidden in grief. The survivor bent down and picked up a scorched photograph from the rubble. The image was barely visible, faces blurred by flame, but she pressed it against her chest. "I carry you with me," she whispered. The reluctant fire starter shifted uneasily, muttering, "Carrying ghosts makes you heavy." The survivor met his gaze, her voice quiet but sharp. "Then I'll carry them until I can." The steady anchor placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. That's what strength is. For the first time, the survivor didn't flinch. The ashes beneath her feet no longer trapped her, they carried her forward. The wind rose, scattering ash into the air like 1,000 forgotten voices. The survivor lifted her head, watching as the ruins seemed to breathe one last time. The reluctant fire starter kicked at the debris, voice bitter. "Truth doesn't fix anything." The survivor replied softly, "No, but lies destroy everything." The steady anchor's voice rumbled like stone breaking. "What we do next matters more than what burned." The survivor's hand tightened around the photo, her breath steady, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She finally knew that the story wasn't about the fire, it was about what survived it. As the dawn stretched across the ruins, the survivor whispered her final words, a truth that would echo long after she was gone. Justice isn't the end, it's the shadow that follows. The reluctant fire starter looked at her, eyes dark with both fear and admiration. "So what now?" he asked quietly. The survivor turned toward the horizon, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now, we live with the echoes." The steady anchor stood at her side, his silence steady as the earth beneath their feet. Behind them, the ashes settled into stillness, but the echo of betrayal lingered, a haunting truth no fire could erase.